Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thank you so much for listening to Your Working Life, my podcast series featuring thought leaders in the career and personal growth arena. You spend a significant portion of your life at work, so I'm on a mission to provide you with tools, inspiration, and resources so you can enjoy your career and love your life. And I'm delighted to welcome a dynamic duo to the show today. I have two special guests, co-authors Hans Finzel and Rick Hicks. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
So much, Caroline.
Hey, Rick, are you there too? All right. We are using technology, and I am so appreciative. Rick, thank you so much for chiming in as well. It's good to hear both of you loudly and clearly. Let me just tell you a little bit about Hans and Rick. Hans Finzel is an author, a highly sought-after speaker, a podcaster, and a trusted authority in the field of leadership. He recently completed 20 years as president and CEO of nonprofit World Venture. Hans is the author of 8 books, including the best-selling The Top 10 Mistakes Leaders Make. He and his wife Donna live in Colorado. And Rick Hicks is my second co-author. He is also a published author, an international speaker, and a consultant. He served as president of OM, Operation Mobilization USA, for 14 years and is currently the North American area leader for OM. Rick is co-author, I should say, of Seeking Solid Ground and Boomers, Xers, and Other Strangers. Love that, Rick. He and his wife, Kathy, live in Southern California. Gentlemen, I'm really excited to talk about your book, Launch Your Encore, Finding Adventure and Purpose in Later Life. So what brought the two of you together to write this book?
I'm going to let Rick answer that question because he's always kind of does a great job telling that story. Go for it, Rick.
Well, Hans and I have been friends for years, and we had similar roles heading up mission organizations. And we would get together annually for some business meetings. And as we just grew closer together as friends, and as we grew older in our positions, we realized that we were kind of getting older. We were going to step down. And so we just started talking about sharing with people some of the things that we're learning. And for me personally, I have a doctorate in lifespan development. When I was in my 20s, I actually knew what was going to happen in my 30s because of what I studied in my 30s, like what would happen in my 40s. But when I got into my 50s, there was not much written on what happened kind of after post-work kind of retirement. We don't like the word retirement. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there was nothing written on what's going to happen when I'm in my 60s. And so Hans and I started doing some research, and we started living through it and came up with some amazing information, and that's really what got us down this path of writing the book together.
Well, Rick, I love that story. And as you know, we're living longer, healthier lives. We're also working more. So this concept of launching an encore career or just an encore life is so timely right now. So I'm very grateful to have you both on. But you mentioned you don't like the R word, and that R word is retirement. Why is that, gentlemen?
Well, I just think that boomers have a different attitude toward what's going to happen in these years. We call it the 60-80 window. For me, retirement means marginalized, put on the shelf, laying on the couch, no longer having any significance in life. And I think we as a generation have always really wanted to make a difference. And I know Rick and I are really wired that way. And so I guess we have to use the R word, but sometimes it's just filled with negative meaning. And so that's why we prefer words like relaunch or encore or the third half of life. But
yeah.
Retirement just means insignificance and fate. Yeah, so that's why we don't like the word.
Well, I agree with you both, and I think it's a dusty term that needs to be updated. So I applaud your innovative spirit, changing the way we look at that next phase in our life, that next chapter. So, gentlemen, maybe you can summarize the message of the book to entice people to go out and read it.
Sure. Rick, you want to crack at it?
Yeah, to summarize the book, it's basically we start out with the first couple of chapters of really telling this situation, how is our generation different than our parents' and our grandparents' generation, and the fact that we're living longer, we have healthier lives, lifespan is stretching out. A lot of people are having questions, and we want people to know you're not the only one with these questions. A lot of people are wondering, what do I do with this thing? And it may be that you have 20 or 30 years left of productive life after you stop your main act. So we want to tell what the situation is, and then really we want to give you some stories of people that have already navigated this land. And then finally we want to give you kind of a roadmap on what you can do to personalize what your future is going to look like. So that's kind of the nutshell. What would you add to that, Hart?
Yeah, Caroline, I'd say another word that we hate is the word seniors. Don't ever call us seniors. So if you don't like to be called senior and you don't believe in traditional retirement, you want our book, because we're saying, hey, we're not in for that. So let's talk about a great alternative. I like to say that this is a book that answers the question, what's next? You know, I call it, we talk about the Jay Leno effect in the book. You know, he was forced to retire when he turned 65, even though he was at the top of his game.
Yeah. Fascinating.
A lot, 7 to 10,000 boomers are turning 65 every day, and a lot of us are being forced to retire whether we like it or not. So we're saying, you know what? Let's just accept it and move on and figure out the next step, which could be the coolest step of our whole life.
Absolutely. Well, and I love this term that you've coined called elder lessons. Tell me about that.
Well, it's a life stage term, and it's applying to the 60-80 window that we referenced to earlier. And it's a new term, and when it comes to lifespan development, it used to be that lifespan was childhood and adulthood and old age, and then that has expanded. And back in 1904, this guy named G. Stanley Hall, he started observing society and realized, there's a lot of time between childhood and when you become an adult. And in 1904, he coined the phrase adolescence, which we all know, and that's that time between. So now, the society is changing and our time frame is changing, and we're seeing it's time to add another stage because we're living so long, and that's where a number of people are beginning to refer to this as elder lessons. And it's a new stage of life, and it's not just where you sit on the shelf and do nothing. There are developmental tasks, there are things we need to do, and our book outlines what the game plan should be.
Well, I love that you're
so it's kind of a new.
Yeah, I like the term. I think it's fantastic, and it's got sparkle. It's got spunk. It's not antiquated. I think what I love the most about the two of you are your energy that you're bringing to this new encore opportunity in life. Right? It's full of possibility.
Yeah, and one thing we like to mention too, in case some people are listening and they're thinking, "Oh, these boomers, they're never going to go away," And we believe strongly in the Gen Xers and the millennials that they ought to take over most of the positions in leadership and in companies and ministries and whatever. And that's what Rick and I have both decided to do. We stepped down after we turned 60 and turned it over to the younger generations in terms of command and control and running things. But what we refuse to do is step away from significance and contribution. And there's a difference. So our message to boomers is, hey, don't hang on to a job when you've lost your passion and you've run your course. Go ahead and make the shift to what you're going to do next. So I think that's an important part of our message.
Well, I love that. And as a career coach, I would add, and I'm a Gen Xer in my late 40s, it's also really important that we honor the boomers, not only because of the great wisdom and experience that you bring to the table. You're still a vital part of this world. And I think it's essential that we honor where you are in the whole scheme of things career. So I'm grateful that you're both still in the game, gentlemen, and I thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
I love this illustration in the book about the escalator in the mall being like life. So tell my audience about that, since they might not have the book in their hands.
Yeah, I came up with that. This is Hans, and to me, life is like a big mall with all these different levels. And we have this beautiful mall here in Colorado called Park Meadows, and there are escalators that take you from one level to the next. Now, I've been in China where the malls they have there are just gigantuous. But the ground floor, you're a baby, you're born, and you go up in childhood, then you go up to the next level, teenager, next level, young adult, then you go up the escalator again. Maybe where you're at right now, Caroline, you're a Gen Xer, and then Rick and I realized one day that we had gone up the escalator and got dumped down into the next level, our 60s, and we thought, whoa, now this is a new level that maybe we haven't anticipated before. So how are we going to, and by the way, the final level is old age.
Okay.
And our point is there's this wonderful level between the time you turn 60 and old age where you can launch a powerful encore. It could be that everything you've done up until this point is prepared you for this stage of life. So that's what we call the escalator of life.
Love it. And there's a great chapter or in part 2 where you say old dogs can learn new tricks. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's one of my chapters as well. And when I turned 60 and I decided to leave my career and move on, one thing I wanted to do, and by the way, we kind of based that on, we tell the story of Mythbusters and there was this great Mythbusters episode where they got a couple of really ornery old dogs that were so undisciplined, and they taught them some amazing tricks, and they proved that you can teach an old dog new tricks. and our message is you got to learn new skills. I learned to be a podcaster in my 60s because I love teaching and on leadership. That's my brand. And so I took a course. I learned how to podcast, and I've been podcasting for 2 years, and I love it. So you have to learn new stuff if you're going to thrive in this stage of life.
So, Rick, tell us what new things are you learning? What are some of the new skills you're developing?
Right after that, and the whole idea of reinventing yourself is that when you get to this different stage, when you get to the upper levels of the escalator, that life isn't what it was, and you have to look at what the life is going to become, not what it's been. And that there's a big mental shift there. And we give the story, and I don't know if your listeners are fans of the Lord of the Rings, but we give the story of Gandalf the Grey, who, if you know him, he was a wizard, and he was this wizard that was a command and control guy. And he was kind of in charge of all the hobbits and told them what to do and the task. And then Gandalf the Grey falls into this fire and dies. He comes back as Gandalf the White. And he, in fact, reinvented himself in that. And he came back and he was no longer the command and control guy. He kind of knew how things were going to end, and he advised people. He no longer led the troops of hobbits that were going to get rid of the ring. He basically said, hey, you guys, you might want to listen to me. I know how this is going to end. I wouldn't go around that mountain. I think I'd go through it. And he just started giving his advice and wisdom, not running everything. And that's what a lot of us will experience as we get older. We're not in charge, but we may be the smartest people on the block.
Love it. And of course, that's Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. So, gentlemen, you wrote about a great quote here. People prefer the certainty of their misery than the misery of uncertainty. So unpack that for me.
Well, a lot of people are afraid to take the jump. Caroline, I run into a lot of people that are miserable in their jobs, a lot of boomers who say, man, I can't wait to retire, but I don't want to retire because I'm afraid of what's next. And so that's what we say. Some people prefer the certainty of this misery that they're in now rather than the misery of the uncertainty of the unknown. And we just encourage people is jump out into the great unknown. Take some risks. Yes, it's fearful, but the worst thing in life is to just get stuck. And Rick can talk about the dark side. It's a great part of our story, but we don't want people to go to the dark side. We want people to take risks and to just don't worry about it. Great things will happen if you're willing to take risks.
Rick, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, this whole dark side thing, when we were preparing for these books, we were reading a lot of different views on what was going on and trying to come up with a good synopsis. And we found that Henry Nouwen, he wrote a book called Aging, and it's really quite old, but he draws this analogy as Henry Nouwen, he's just so good at drawing these pictures. And he basically said, when you get to a certain point in life, there's going to kind of be this fork in the road as you get older. And he said, you can choose the dark side. Now, he wrote this, by the way, before Star Wars. But he said, you can choose the dark side. And that is, we've all met some people, they just kind of live on their couch, they're grumpy, they're entitled, they demand things from people. And none of us younger people want to be around them because they're just so old and they just feel bad and they make you feel bad. Well, that's kind of that entitled darkness. And science has shown that if you do that, your lifespan is going to be shorter, your quality of life is going to be less. So that's the dark side. What we promote in the book and give people a way to find this is that you move to the light, and that's what Henry Nouwen called it. And that is that you're not entitled, but you're actually a contributor to society. You're finding ways to give back. It may not be a job, it most likely won't be. It may be mentoring. It may be volunteering. It may be just sharing your wisdom. And then people kind of want to be around you, and they want to gain from your wisdom. And that's a choice that all of us will have to make. You can go to the dark side or you can go to the light.
Love it. Good stuff, Rick. So, gentlemen, what I love at the end of the book, in part 4, actually, you talk about the assignment and writing your personal encore plan. Now, without doing a spoiler alert, because we want people to read the whole book, tell us why it's important to have that action step of a plan.
Do you want to take that up? You want me to?
Rick, you take it, because you're big on this life plan and timeline, so you take that.
Yeah, well, part of the thing that we're talking about in this plan is that we lay out kind of this 9 steps that you can do. Now, there's nothing magic about this, and it's put out there in general terms, but what we don't want to do is raise these expectations for people in the book and say, yeah, you're going up the escalator, life is different, change, find all this positive stuff, and then leave people on their own. So we actually kind of close it down with one of our last chapters as giving you kind of these 9 steps that you can take. And we're really, like you say, without the spoiler alert, we're really telling you, draw back on people that know you to get some input. Review your own life, find out the things that you really did like that went well for you. Learn a little bit more about yourself if you haven't, about your temperament, and what kind of involvement is going to be good for you. We're all going to be facing fears during this period, as we do in life in general. And we really talk a little bit about facing your fears, clarifying your dreams, and then really just some pragmatic things to write down, how to develop a plan, some other stuff you can go to help you do this. So we really lay out what your personal plan could look like, and it's going to be so different for everybody. There's no one set plan, whether you're single, whether you're doing it as a couple, whether you still work, whether you're retired. So you really have to personalize it, and we give our readers an opportunity to personalize it for their future.
And guys, what I love too, in part 3, the stories, people who show us the way. You do chronicle several individuals who have illustrated their encore, whether it's career or just encore life. And I think those were so relatable. So thank you for weaving those into your book.
Yeah, I love the story of Julie Clark. She was one of the very first airline captains in the commercial airline industry in America. It used to be a men's club. She was one of the early women who broke that club and sat in the left seat in the front of a commercial plane. Now it's very common. I just flew back from Tampa the other day here to Colorado, and our captain was a woman. Everybody's comfortable with that now, but they weren't back then. But, they have a mandatory retirement age in the airline industry, as well as a lot of medical professions, et cetera, et cetera. So she had this little hobby on the side, she had restored an old vintage World War II single engine aircraft. She started flying air shows. She had to retire from her commercial job as a pilot, and now she's one of the most popular shows in air shows all over America. That's a great encore where you can take something that might have been a hobby or part of your career and turn it into a whole new chapter of your life.
And clearly she is thriving. Wow, gentlemen, what a great book. I'm so enjoying it, and I'll share with you a little personal insight into my life. I am married to a boomer, so my husband and I have a 20-year age split, and he's loving this book. So I thank you for him as well. He is newly retired from his career, and it's given him a whole new outlook about what's next. And it's especially interesting since I am very much in the workforce. So I thank you on behalf of my husband for this wonderful book as well.
I bet he's busy, isn't he?
Oh my gosh, he's so busy. I have to book an appointment to see him. Yes, he is.
I bet he hates this question that I hate. If people say, "So, how are you enjoying retirement?"
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I have because again, I don't like that word, and I am not. I did retire from the career I had, but I'm not laying around on the couch.
Yeah,
and I don't think he is.
He's not. He's exactly the same way, and he bristles at the retirement term. So you are kindred spirits in that. Well, Hans Finzel and Rick Hicks, thank you so much. What a joy. I want to remind the audience the book is Launch Your Encore, Finding Adventure and Purpose Later in Life. Now tell us how we can buy the book and how we can follow you online.
Well, you can buy the book anywhere that books are sold, of course, Amazon or barnesandnoble.com, and it's available in print, large print, and ebook. And also we have a website, launchyyourencore.com, devoted just to the book, so you can see our beautiful headshots and learn more about us, contact us if you'd like to, and you can download the first chapter in the introduction for free at launchyyourencore.com.
Wonderful. Well, Hans and Rick, I wish you great success. I thank you so much for spending time with me on the show today, and I am recommending your book widely. Thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks so much, Caroline.
You are most welcome. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning into Your Working Life, where my goal is to help you design your career destiny so it doesn't happen by default. True career and life satisfaction is possible, and it's time to embrace what you love doing so you can do more of it. I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Take good care.